Ha, Banjo and Kazooie is not what this video is about. Get them out of here. Banjo and Tooie, the Smash characters. I've played this game a bunch on and off, constantly throughout my life, from when I got it when I was 7 to now, which I am very old. But there was one thing I never was able to do. I never beat it. For the longest time, even as a kid, I thought this game sucked. Except the multiplayer mode, that was pretty good. But do you know what I did recently? I beat this entire game. And my opinion changed. It's alright. I definitely prefer Kazooie, and I see a lot of people in the community fighting between which one they like more, whether it's Banjo or Tooie. And after looking around and experiencing it for myself, I think I understand why. And the answer is pretty clear. So keep watching if you want to find out. I cringe saying that one. I think the main reason is that people misunderstand what genre Tooie is. When you look at Banjo-Kazooie, you say, yep, that's a platformer. When you look at Banjo-Tooie, you look at it the same way you look at Kazooie, and you're like, yeah, that's a platformer. But Tooie's, to me, was less of a platformer and more of an adventure game. And no, I'm not saying it's not a platformer, it most definitely is, but I feel like the platforming elements are lessened in favor of the adventure element. When I think of a 3D platformer, I typically think of an area that's rather small, where you can go collectible to collectible, getting all the stuff in a relatively simple manner. And most of the time in these kinds of games, the maps are relatively small. Some are big, but most of the time they're relatively on the smaller scale. Let's look at Banjo-Kazooie's map, for example. Looking at this, you're like, yeah, okay, this is not that bad. Then you look at Tooie and then you go, what the hell is going on? Not only that, but the way you earn the collectibles in Tooie is much more different than Kazooie. There are puzzles and such in Kazooie, but in Tooie you have to do a lot more to get some of the items. Which again, isn't bad, but it's just a different type of game. Because of all this, the bigger map, the bigger scale, it takes a lot more time to do things, which is the biggest reason as to why I think there's a divide. A divide in the community, that is. I think the best way to start this point is with an example. To save the aliens in Hailfire Peaks, you must find them in a completely different world, do their mission there, and then they go to Hailfire Peaks. And then you find them in Hailfire Peaks, and then you see you have to use a Mumbo pad to save one of them. So you have to walk to Mumbo's house, turn into Mumbo, and then you save them. And then you see 3 aliens pop out. So now you have to go back to Banjo. So you have to walk back to the Mumbo house, go back to Banjo, and then you have to use the bill drill on one of them, which is fine. The other you need to go way high up to the top of the level, find a swap pad, swap to Kazooie, and then you have to fly down to Kazooie to get the kid, then you have to go back to Banjo, then you have to go back to the next kid who you have to use the bill drill on like the first one, but this time he's fucking dead, so you have to revive him, so you have to go back to Mumbo, and then you have to go back to the kid, and then you revive the kid, and then you have to go back to Banjo, and then you get the Jiggy. It's like, what the? And guess what? If you're missing any one of the power-ups I mentioned in that spiel, you can't do it. So you would have to go back to a previous world and get the power-up. My point here is that it just takes too much time. I know not all of the pieces are like this, like you just walk up to some and get them, but there's still quite a few that are like this, to the point where it's just abysmal, and that was only an example. It's not even the puzzles that take so long, it's the speed of the character. Like, even when you're running as Kazooie, it's just so slow. I feel like if there was a double pulse speed power-up somewhere, it would be fine, but it's just, there's not. There's just so many small things in this game that add up that just make the game take so long. It feels just like, oh, there's so much padding. Like the Mumbo pads, you have to go into Mumbo all the time to do stuff. You have to go to Wumba to turn into something so you can get a Jiggy. You find something interesting in the distance, only for you have to go back to it later with something you get later. Speaking of things taken later, I'm not going to go through each world and say which ones I liked and which one I didn't like. Tier list right here. But I feel like the ones on the bottom, there's a reason for it, and it also relates to the time aspect, where a lot of the worlds later on just take so long to start up. Like, Like Grunty Industries. It took me like an hour to get things rolling before I was able to get my first jiggies, and then they started coming along slowly and slowly and slowly. It just started, it's the time it takes to actually start getting the good stuff that bothers me. There's a bunch of other issues I have with the game, but this isn't me complaining about the game, because I actually like this game. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I do like this game a lot. And that's not what this video is anyway. And I know the past couple of minutes have been me complaining, but because I truly think that's the biggest issue with the game that causes a lot of people not to like it. But I'm just going to flip everything I just said and explain why I think this is actually good for a lot of people, and why a lot of people consider this game good. Because of the reasons I just listed that were bad. A lot of people love adventure games. They like the slow feel of them. They like being able to go into a new world and explore what it has to offer. And that's what this game is. It's a massive, big game with huge worlds that you get to explore, solve riddles, and do puzzles for. And that's a positive for a lot of people. For me, it's like I want to just get the note, get the note, get the note, level done, next world, get the note. So even though a lot of people think that the games are similar, I mean, they definitely move the exact same, the type of games they are vastly different, and that's why a lot of people would prefer one to the other. I mean, there's some people that like both. I certainly like both, but it's definitely I like one way more than the other one. And that's all really because it boils down to this time issue where everything takes so long to do, which is a negative for some people and a positive for others. I ran out of things today, so I'm going to put that cringe animation of clicking that subscribe button at the top of the screen. And thank you for watching. Which world is the best world in the game?